Metal Gear Solid Delta, the long-awaited remake of the 2004 PS2 classic Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, directed by Hideo freaking Kojima, is finally close to being out. It's been a long-ass wait, and I'm not just talking about its initial announcement either, which, yes, has felt like forever, but it's also been 10 years since the last major Metal Gear title, Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain.
Because I have phantom pain!
Since that time, the way that pop culture has shifted from 2015 to 2025 means that Metal Gear Solid is consumed very differently. It's the golden age of Metal Gear, and honestly, I'm here for the Renaissance. The story of one man's mission to stop the world from terrorists, uncovering global conspiracies, getting mind-fucked a few times, and living to tell the tale over some pachinko minigames is something that future generations are going to revel in just as much as their ancestors did. But hey, if you've got a hankering for some more Metal Gear before and or after Delta, you've got a lot to pick from. From the PS1 classic, the duology on the PS2, the clusterfuck that's 90% cutscene on PS3, the technically unfinished masterpiece on the PS4, and a plethora of side content on the PSP, Game Boy Color, NES, personal home computer, your car stereo, a movie screen sometime before 2058, the Weather Channel. With all of these games, years and years of a legacy brought about from the depths of creator Hideo Kojima's mind machinations, where do you even go from here? Okay, so let's start with the basics. You do not need to play any other Metal Gear game in the saga before playing Delta. Despite that big-ass triangle having a good old 3 behind it, there's a reason why Konami decided to title it that, and it doesn't have anything to do with the whole changing river basin thing or whatever the fuck thing they're saying. It was so audiences wouldn't get confused and brick their PS5s by putting a PS1 disc inside of it.
Xbox, record that.
Delta is a perfectly fine introduction to the series, provided it's good, I don't know, but in terms of being a digestible introduction to the entire franchise, both Delta and 3 by itself are good starting points. Despite how many versions of 3 there are, basically any of them are perfectly playable in this day and age. You know, there's a reason why this game is considered one of the best of all time.
If you step further back from the urinal, it makes it look like your cock is huge.
This game came out in 2004 on the PlayStation 2 and was later re-released as part of the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 with enhanced graphics and playable on anything except your toaster oven. This game came out around the time when Delta was first announced. You can't snag a copy of Delta. This version of 3 is also fantastic. Both versions contain the exact same story, the same dialogue, same basic mechanics, and they share the exact same voice acting, thank God. I really hope that the English lip syncing in Delta isn't nearly as shitty as the originals.
Do you love her?
In general, both Delta and 3 are perfectly fine starting points to the series. I know some people in the fandom are probably going to get mad at me about that, but it's true. The gameplay is more than accessible, the story gives you enough loose threads to get caught up in future games. Well, games that canonically are in the future but came out previously, whatever. I know these two guys look exactly the same, but trust me, you'll be fine with your Naked Snake story before you get into Solid Snake. That sounded really homoerotic, but if you really want to go back and run through some of the games beforehand, the Master Collection is a great resource to do that with. You got Metal Gear Solid 1 and Metal Gear Solid 2 on there, both fantastic games in their own right. But I will advise you, play MGS1 before you play MGS2. 2 is a lot more mechanically similar to MGS3, but in order to understand the entire fucking plot of 2, you have to play 1. Like, all the way through, that's a non-negotiable, and for the love of God, do not skip the cutscenes. Let me just tell you this right now, if you're not interested in games that have 30-minute long cutscene chains, this is not the series for you. A large part of the games are their stories, and to remove those are removing an integral part of the experience. The stealth gameplay is still absolutely fantastic in every game, don't get me wrong, but they are only half of the game. The remaining half of your playtime is spent watching cutscenes. That might be a deal breaker for some, but if you stick with it, you'll be here for one of the most iconic stories in gaming. So yes, again, Delta or 3 are a great starting point, but if you really want to play some games to get completely up to speed, the Master Collection versions of 1 and 2 are also great games to begin with. What are these two? Metal Gear 1 and 2 with no Solid? Where's the Solid? Well, trust me, he is in these games. Metal Gear 1 and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake are two games that came out before the original Metal Gear Solid on the PS1, predating it by almost 10 years. These are top-down 8-bit stealth games with their own original stories that have ties to MGS1, and I'll get to that in a minute, but these games came out on the home computer MSX2, which was Japanese only, leaving Western audiences with no canonical Metal Gear games until MGS1 came out in 1998. Now, I say canonical because America did get 2 8-bit Metal Gear games for the NES, Metal Gear and Snake's Revenge. I'm just going to get this out of the way now. These are significantly inferior downgrades to the Japanese games, only made because they sold well in North America, and they didn't even have Kojima's involvement. Metal Gear on the NES is a port of the MSX game with translation issues, glitches, and fucked up mechanics that don't even work.
It starts to blow up. As it does so, you bring up the inventory screen. Then you go back to the main screen. And the fucking computer is back!
And Snake's Revenge is a completely non-canon game with its own original story featuring a cyborg big boss in side-scroller sections like it's fucking Turtles in Time, or Blasto. I never played Blasto. You can find them both on the Master Collection in a random submenu, I'm assuming because Konami is ashamed of them. In short, we're going to completely ignore these games and focus on the MSX titles instead. Metal Gear 1 and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake both take place between the events of MGS3 and MGS1. Snake Eater acts as a prequel to all 3 games, but for a while, 1 was the only game that Western audiences could even play. It's kind of odd when you think about it, but really they're not that essential. Metal Gear 1 is just straight up dated. It has a lot of the mainstay traditions the series is known for, but it's got really archaic design choices that make it more of a chore than an enjoyable experience. Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, however, is a far better game that I'd actually recommend. It has far better and more advanced stealth mechanics, a great atmosphere, catchy music, and a story that's way more Metal Gear-esque while still containing many of the same beats as the original. It even has story beats that would show up again in Metal Gear Solid. But because of that, it's also not something that you have to play to get the whole story. Don't get me wrong, it is a decent game in its own right, but there's a reason why Kojima repeated plot elements in MGS1. Not a lot of people played 2. The PS1 game was a chance for him to give gamers another way to experience those plot threads from the MSX titles in a much more easily accessible way. So you can play this one if you want, but I would rather you start with MGS1 and 2 if you really want to give the old games a go before Delta. Phew. Okay, so now that we've gotten all of that out of our way, I think it's time we focus on what to play after Delta, and boy, this is where things can get a little complicated, so strap in. This might take a while.
What are you...
So let's say that you've played Delta and you want more of that classic tactical espionage action. There are 2 generally accepted ways to play the series, in chronological order or release order. Release order is generally better suited for your first time playing the series, even though this is the newest game, which is a remake of the 3rd game and technically the 5th game in the series, and it might also be the 7th game in the series. The release order goes like this: Metal Gear 1, Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, Metal Gear Solid 1, 2 Sons of Liberty, 3 Snake Eater, 4 Guns of the Patriots, Peace Walker, 5 Ground Zeroes, and 5 The Phantom Pain. Yes, there are 2 games in the series, both numbered 5. You got that? No? Great, let's move on. For the most part, I think this is a great way to play the series. You can see the evolution in design philosophy Kojima approached this series with, and how it evolved over time. The stakes get bigger and bigger with every release, and you can feel the response and cultural phenomenon of the Metal Gear games grow as you play through them. However, the one major issue I have with the series comes at the very end after Metal Gear Solid 4. 4 was intended to be the finale of the series, wrapping up every plot thread and giving us a satisfying ending to the franchise, but as you can see, they just kind of kept going with the PSP game Peace Walker and the duology that really capped the series off, MGS5. These games take place before the events of Metal Gear 1, but after the events of MGS3. These post-4 games act best if you view them as clarification games, ones that better detail and explain things that happen in the first leg of the franchise leading up to 4. The main issue you'll find with these games is that their stories are some of the weakest in the franchise if you play them at the very end. Like I said, these games act to clarify the events of the series before the Solid Snake titles, and playing them at the end after such a grand finale in 4 leaves them feeling a little neutered in my eyes. So alternatively, you can play these games chronologically, starting with 3, then going to Peace Walker, both 5s, Metal Gear 1, Metal Gear 2, MGS1, Sons of Liberty Mutual, and Guns of the New England Patriots. For the longest time, this is just how I would play the series. You get all of the backstory and plot details happening in real time, letting you go from game to game without worrying about conflicting information, confusing motivations, or unclear details. That being said, it doesn't make the details in the games themselves less confusing, just the ones between the games. Just just stick with me on this one. There are some spoilers, no doubt about that, but they mostly come in the form of timelines at the very end of the game after the credits. And for those, just close your eyes, I guess. I don't know. Regardless, I also really like this method too. No matter what people in the fandom say, I will testify that yes, the chronological order is a perfectly fine method to play the Metal Gear series.
There are dozens of us. Dozens!
However, I do think that this order comes with more jank than the release order. The biggest issue is accessibility. Going from 3 to Peace Walker requires you to be interested in base management and mission-focused gameplay, which 3 didn't have. And playing 5 afterwards requires you to play like 70 fucking hours of missions over and over and over again, just before you can even get to the most iconic games of the series. And then afterwards, once you're finished with one of the most technically perfect stealth games ever created, with astonishing performance, amazing graphics and voice acting, you have to go back to or skip straight to MGS1. But in that case, you may as well play the MSX games anyway, since 5's story is essential to those games. But most of all, the main issue is with the platform you're playing these on. If you're playing Delta, you'll need to jump back to the PSP to play Peace Walker. Yeah, we're getting all Kingdom Hearts in this shit, buying additional consoles to play games that look like they're side content, but are actually completely essential to the story. Then you have to jump 2 generations to the PS4 or Xbox One to play Metal Gear Solid 5, then back to the Master Collection from that point onward, except 4, but we'll get there when we get there. That's a lot of console hopping, and it can be pretty annoying to deal with.
Okay, forget it. Let's say I want a
accessible way to play Metal Gear Solid.
Do you know what a
Accessible way to play Metal Gear Solid.
is? That's what I want. A damn
Accessible way to play Metal Gear Solid.
Now where in the hell would I go?
Fortunately, there is a solution. Meet the Metal Gear Solid Legacy Collection, coming out in 2012 and featuring every single game in the franchise canonically up to that point with updated graphics and accessibility, including Peace Walker.
And also 4.
Unfortunately, this was only released on the PS3, unless you want to get the HD collection from a year earlier that's also available on Xbox 360, which has 2, 3, and Peace Walker. But yeah, if you've got a PS3 and a PS4, you are totally able to play the entire franchise with 2 consoles. I'd imagine everyone that got the Master Collection at this point might be seething, but a lot of people don't have a nearly 20-year-old console, so it's pretty much whatever at this point. The biggest problem child of the whole series has to be MGS4. This thing was exclusively designed to be played on a PS3, and it is incredibly difficult to emulate. For now, it's locked to the PS3 with no other options of play. Now, in the future, there's a very strong chance that this, Peace Walker, and some other titles will come out on a second Master Collection, but that's just wishful thinking right now. Are you frustrated about that? Just imagine how the Metal Gear community feels right now. This shit sucks, and it sucked for like a fucking decade. But let's get back to the main issue at hand here. What should I play after Delta if I want more Metal Gear action? Both orders of play have their own problems to deal with, but I do honestly believe that a solution can be reached pretty simply by combining the best elements of both orders. We are left with the super special Seraph Metal Gear Assembly Order of Importance 2 Fighter Turbo, and it goes like this. Metal Gear Solid 3, or Delta, first. Since it chronologically comes first, it's one of the best, and it's really easy to digest. Then, Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2, skipping over the MSX games unless you really want to play them. Along with everything that I just said about the MSX games, MGS1 contains prologues that get you up to speed on the events of the first 2 games, and they're very succinct, aside from the special agent's name in Metal Gear 2 being Holly, not Hori. Oh my god. But yeah, MGS1 and 2 are next. Then we skip all the way to Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker through PS3 technology. 4 and Peace Walker account for gaps in the timeline created by other games being released in between them, making playing 4 right after 2 feel a little off. Same goes for Peace Walker right after 3. So I believe it's best to replicate that same feeling by playing the remaining games of the Big Boss trilogy between MGS2 and MGS4. Also, by playing Peace Walker right after 2, you start to get a lot more clarity on a lot of the fucking weird shit the series started introducing in that game. Fortunately, you can comprehend it in a much more grounded setting with the character you can actually relate to. Follow Peace Walker up with Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes and Metal Gear Solid 5 The Phantom Pain. If you're wondering why there are 2 5s, with one of them being a glorified $30 tech demo, it's because
Money!
just buy the definitive edition. It's not that much more expensive than Phantom Pain. It's got all the DLCs and contains both Ground Zeroes and 5, so you don't have to waste extra money on pieces of plastic you'll barely use. But yes, play 5 after Peace Walker, both of them. Then finally, at the end of your journey, you should play MGS4. It introduces many concepts that feel unexplained unless you've played 5, which is a problem with the narrative admittedly, but I would rather have the narrative be comprehensive than have you be confused. I don't care if it's cheating. I will sew this franchise together with bandages and duct tape if I have to. But yeah, 4 is the ultimate ending to the series. It ties everything up together in a nice, neat little bow, and you don't have to worry about things being unexplained because you just played the games that fucking explain it for you. Yes, in my opinion, this is the order you can play the series in and not be confused, and you'll have the best experience possible, according to me. Who the fuck am I? I don't know. Now for a little Q&A portion of the video where I can go over some entries in the series you might be curious about. First of all, what about Rising Revengeance, the one with the funnies in it? Well, Rising canonically takes place after MGS4, and it does contain some story elements from it, but they're not really all that important, aside from if you want to know just how Raiden's body got so fucked up. Rising's story was written after the developers decided that setting a game at any other point in the timeline would be way too constrictive, so it was intentionally made at the very end so gamers wouldn't be confused. If you're interested in keeping tabs on the Metal Gear storyline, I would play this only after 4, but really you can play this one whenever you want, honestly. It's not like it's a stealth game, even if it tries to be one. Keep in mind it will spoil things from MGS4, just be smart about it, I guess, I don't know. You might also be curious about One Portable Ops. It is a PSP game that Konami likes to pretend doesn't exist. This is a game set between the events of 3 and Peace Walker, released right before MGS4 hit the shelves, and yeah, this is basically non-canon. Well, its canonicity is debated in the same way that Rising's is. They were both developed with original stories that tie into the main games, but Kojima didn't direct these two, so some elements are a little more canonical than others. The thing about Rising is that you can play it and still have fun and ignore fucking everything about the story. Portable Ops is basically just Peace Walker, except it fucking sucks. Like, you have to carry enemies from the middle of the stage all the way to this goddamn truck in the corner. Slow as fuck. I do not like Portable Ops. I don't want you to play this one. But yeah, aside from those two hiccups, the rest of the franchise is largely non-canonical. The NES games, Acid titles, Ghost Babel, Ocelot's Fishing Jamboree, Big Boss's Burger King Simulator all take place in alternate timelines or alternate universes that don't affect the main games. The quality of these games can be pretty variable considering basically none of them were made with Kojima's involvement, but that's a story for another day, I suppose. But for now, again, if you want to replay the series in preparation for Delta, go with 1 and 2 on the Master Collection and or run through 3 as well. Afterwards, you can play in my super special curated order or the release order for your first time. And if you're wondering where Survive fits in all of this,